Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are
How
you
are
doing?
you?
I'm doing well. How are you
I'm
doing?
doing well now that we're in and on. I'm a technological nightmare.
No, I think you did much better than a lot of other sessions that we have, wherein we spend 10, 12 minutes just trying to get on, and Instagram sometimes plays really weird games. But it's nice to be connected. Very good morning to you, Laurie.
Good morning.
I believe you're joining us from Idaho this morning.
Yes, from Boise, Idaho. So in the map of the United States, that's in the upper left-hand corner, and in Boise, I'm in the southwestern corner of the state. I'm about 20 miles from Oregon.
Oh, okay, okay. Very nice to connect. I've stayed in the US for about 5 years, but I never got a chance to go to Idaho.
Where were you when you were here?
Um, so I did my master's from University of Maryland. So I was in Maryland for a while, and then I worked there for a couple of years, and then I moved back to India
Okay, so you were on the East Coast near the
on the
Atlantic
East
Ocean.
Coast. Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Have you ever been to India?
I have not been to India. It's
Oh,
on my bucket list, but I've not been there. I've been a lot of places, and my husband is retired from the military. He's been
right.
he's been everywhere, but I've been a lot of places, but not India yet.
Okay, so I think let me extend an invitation for you to come and visit us one of these coming months, and when you do, just let us know, and then we'll be happy to show you around when you're in this area.
Okay.
So let me welcome you formally on behalf of our book club. It's called Story Zone, and this is a book club that operates in Bangalore, India. While we get started, I have the first question that I want to ask you is regarding the Sean McPherson series of books, and from whatever little I have read about it and of it, I hear that it's quite a potent cocktail of police procedurals and detective fiction and mystery and lots of other stuff going on in the background. So I'd just like to understand a little bit about this cocktail and see what all goes into preparing one.
Okay. So this is the series that we have so far. So we started with Indelible, then Iconoclast, then Impervious, then Iniquity comes out in April. And you might have noticed that all of the titles start with
I
the letter I, and they're 4 syllables long. And I write
uh
I write the entire book around a single word. So I only use the word once in a book. And so everything is driven by malice. Something horrible happens, and then we're in the pursuit of justice, not vigilante justice within the law, of course.
mhm,
And so we've got mobsters, we have gangs, we have this takes place in Bellingham, Washington, which is in the Pacific Northwest.
right.
It's right on Bellingham Bay, which then goes into the San Juan Islands and then goes into the shipping channels. And if you think in terms of the globe, Alaska's right above that.
Uh-huh,
Across the Bering Strait it's less than 50 miles from Russia. So a lot of things can happen there. They can traffic humans, they can traffic drugs, they can traffic guns. And so that's the perfect location for this. So all of this stuff is going on, as well as sweet, loving, kind, and thoughtful things. Many people think they have fallen into a cozy, and then all of a sudden it goes from cozy to not so cozy. And the bottom line of every single book that I write is hope, is hope, is hope, is hope. And
mhm,
because in real life, bad things happen, but in real life, good things happen too. And I try to
right.
bring that to the surface. But while we're getting to the good things, we're on the edge of our seat, white knuckles.
Laurie, help me understand what path did your life take to bring you to this series of books? I mean, if I were to meet you somewhere, I don't think I'd relate such subjects with such a sweet face, and I'm really intrigued about your story. So, walk us through your growing up
Okay.
years, your
It's
teenage, and your adulthood.
how that happened. So it's funny that you said that, because last week I got to talk with a prison warden at a high maximum security, because I needed some questions answered. And I've gotten to talk with a lot of people. He said, you know, Laurie, you've got such a sweet face, and it's hard for you to ask me these questions. And I said, well, I want my books to be authentic. But how this came about was, before I retired, I was a holistic health practitioner. And my first two books were Note to Self, A 7-Step Path to Gratitude and Growth, and then The Business of Being, Soul Purpose in and Out of the Workplace. And every single one of my clients would say, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book. And so I did. And the first one, Note to Self, actually was the Self-Help Book of the Year in 2017. It did very
Wow.
well. But once I wrote those two nonfiction books, I had done a brain dump. Everything that I wanted to write about that subject, about personal transformation, everything I wanted to write, I had already gotten out of my head. But by that time, I was now addicted. I was now addicted to writing. So I thought, and I read a lot. I read well over 100 books a year. And I thought, I wonder, this happened. I wonder. So I wrote the first of all, I sketched out the idea in my mind, and I pitched it to She Writes Press, actually Spark Press, which is the sister, the sister imprint to this. And I sent it to Brooke Warner, the publisher, and she said, ooh, I like the sound of that. So I wrote the book. And it was very well received. It won 6 literary honors. And so I kept going, and that one was well received, and I kept going. And now people are hooked. Now people are like, well, write them faster. They come out once a year. Every April they come out. And I can't write any faster. There's a lot of stuff that has to take place in the background. You're having copy edits done. You're having beta readers. You're having sensitivity readers. You can only do so much so fast. I don't know how some of these other authors, put out 2 and 3 books a year. I have no idea how they do it, but the process became very addictive, and it's different. So with nonfiction, you're working with facts, and it came pretty easy because you're dealing with facts. In this, when you're writing fiction, you're making the whole thing up, and but I'm making it as authentic as possible. I've ridden with policemen. I've talked with the SWAT team. I've talked with litigators. I've talked with private investigators. I've talked with homicide detectives, and on and on and on, because I want everything to be accurate. I shoot once a month. My husband takes me out so I can go shoot, and so I can talk about reloading or hot loading or firing a gun, or how would you get it out of a holster? What kind of holsters are there? Ankle holsters, waist holsters, shoulder holsters? What kind of gun? What kind of ammunition? So it's very addictive, and it's exciting. But you also want to, you're getting this cutting edge, bleeding edge, but you also want to do the nice side of things. And you also want to have hope. And you also, at least for me, I want to have justice. I want to have justice.
So Sean McPherson, I'm guessing, is the name of the detective.
Yes.
Right. Now, when you were writing the first book, and it was a thought in your mind, did you imagine this as a series, or did you think that, okay, maybe if the first book works, I have an option to convert it into a series? Or did you leave some things in the first book itself wherein it was meant to be?
So the first book, I got the idea when I was writing the second book at a women's writing retreat on a Whidbey Island, which is off the coast of Seattle. And I was sitting in my little cottage, and I was looking across the way, and I saw this man pushing a wheelbarrow, very kind of a landscape man. And the man had a pronounced limp, and his face was very, very, very handsome. And in my mind, I tucked that in my mind, just went in my mind. And then I thought, oh, I wonder if he was at the age that maybe he'd been in the military, and maybe something happened in Afghanistan. I didn't know. But that was in my mind. Then years later, when I decided to start writing, I pulled him out of my mind, and he is the vision of Sean McPherson. Sean McPherson had been a police officer, and he was in a horrific accident, and he has a limp. His left leg, it has a limp. And when I wrote the first book, I didn't know it would be a series, but I did leave enough breadcrumbs. I left enough that it could pick up. So when it did really well, then Brooke said, we've got to move forward with this. So then after that, she gave me a contract for 3 books, then 5 books, then 7 books. Now it's 9 books. So I'm obligated at the end of each book to write the prologue for the next book. So I have to know enough in my mind. I have to have enough breadcrumbs in my mind to know where I'm going. So when I say to her, okay, I'll say, I know the next book will be titled this, and I will write around that. But now for my last two, I have what I call placeholders. I said, Brooke, I think it's going to be titled Incognito for book 8. Right now I'm writing book 7. But I said for book 8, I think it's going to be Incognito, but don't hold me to that.
Mhm.
And I think book 9 is going to be Insatiable, but don't hold me to that. So, we move along, and we have breadcrumbs that we can reach back to. And we are always, at least me, I'm introducing 4 new fictitious writers in residence at a writing retreat called Pines and Quill, which is fictitious, but it's based on my stay at Hedgebrook. So it's all fictitious, and that's where the hard part comes in, because it's not real, making it so real that people call the Chamber of Commerce and say, I can't find Pines and Quill. Can you give me the contact information? And that's my goal, is for it to be so real. I get emails saying, I'm a writer and I want to be a writer in residence there. Where do I sign up? Where do I, submit my application? And I'm like, you can't. It's fake.
It's in my head.
It's in my head.
So the fourth book is releasing, and you're saying that you're already working on book 7, and you have an idea for book 8. So you really have to be ahead of the curve to work on a series like this.
Absolutely. And you have to, so every book has 4 different writers in residence come to Pines and Quill. Always one of them will have some kind of a disability. That's why I have sensitivity readers. Somebody's in a wheelchair, somebody is blind, somebody is deaf, somebody is a double amputee, a single amputee. So there's something. And because I think that population is sometimes overlooked, or if they're not overlooked, some people don't realize that while they might have a compromise physically, there's nothing compromised about them at all, and they are just as clever, just as fantastic as anybody else on the planet. And so I have sensitivity readers. I have quite a bit of knowledge. I personally don't have any disabilities, but I have people in my family and friends and acquaintances, and I ask a lot of questions, and then I use sensitivity readers as well.
Sure.
But so that is a big draw. That is a big draw, because many people don't have that segment of the population in their books, and I always represent a segment of that population. Always, I always have, and I always will. And then the big draw, one of the other big draws, is I have 2 dogs. One is Hemingway, and he's an Irish wolfhound, and one is, we call her Maggie, but her full name is Sister Margaret Mary McCracken. She's named after a nun, and everybody calls her Maggie, and she's the guide dog for, her name is Ivy Gladstone, and now she's a permanent part of the book, and Ivy is blind. So we have these 2 dogs, and so people, different people come into the story for different reasons, and I love being able to continually make it fresh.
Interesting, very interesting. I think this is unlike anything I've ever read or heard about before. So I'm very, very tempted to start with Indelible and go all the way to the end.
I think if you start with Indelible, you'll keep going. It is. If people find it half as fun to read as I have writing it, it is addictive. It is addictive.
So how many addicts do you have in and around your family?
Well, my family, it's funny. My sister is a huge reader. My niece is a huge reader of this book. My husband, every day at the end of a writing day, I read to him what I've written. That helps me catch mistakes, or he can say, no, don't go there, or ooh, yeah, let's hear more about that. And then my son is a big reader. So family wise, that would be it. But I have quite a large fan base, which is fun for me to have. And I get a lot of emails, and asking or suggesting, which is fun. Would you consider having, this kind of a personality? Would you consider having this kind of a disability? Would you consider? So it's really fun for me to be able to incorporate. And if I do, I always thank that person at the end in the acknowledgments. And, thanks to Susie Q, this person is in this book.
Right. Very, very, very interesting. It's quite a journey.
Yes.
What was the age when you first probably got attracted to this genre of books. I'm guessing you read a lot from the same genre also.
Yes. So I read about 3 heavy duty, cutting edge, bleeding edge crime thrillers, and then I cleanse my reading palette with a rom-com. I'll read something that's, you know, sweet, loving, kind, and thoughtful, and then I dive back into the rough waters, and then I come out and read a rom-com and that kind of thing. My mom was a huge reader, and she got my sister and I hooked on reading, and I started, you know, Time at the Top, A Wrinkle in Time, all of those types of books. And then as I got older, I went into the, you know, the Nancy Drew and the, you know, private investigator that way. And then as I got older, I got into the hardcore. My favorite authors, I have 6 authors. Well, there's more auto-buy authors for me, but 6 favorite authors, and that's David Baldacci, Robert Brinza, Robert Dugoni, Liv Constantine, which is 2 sisters. It's a fake name for 2 sisters. Louise Penny, the Chief Inspector Gamache series. I adore her. Anne Cleves. I have a lot of favorite authors, and I read and read and read and see how do they do it. How, you know, some people have long flowing sentences, some are short and concise to make things move, and they're all great. There's not one style I like more than the other. It's so fun to read a wide variety and think, oh, you know, that's something to think about, that whatever it might be.
I also remember reading from your author bio, and I read it 3 times to really understand that you walked across Scotland.
Yes, I walked across Scotland, which is 211 miles. So if you go from the North Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, we walked along the Caledonian Canal. And then when we got to the Atlantic Ocean, then we took a boat over to the Isle of Skye and stayed there a while. But at the midway point, crossing from the North Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, walking, we also climbed Ben Nevis, which is the highest point in the British Isles. And that was quite amazing. We started out at the base, and it was, I wouldn't say it was warm, but it wasn't freezing. And by the time we were up at the top, it was everybody up there. We were in parkas and snow gear, and it was ice and snow, and we could only see so far of the time of year it was. But it was also, I mean, this was no LARP. This was a big deal, and that was
It does
it was
sound like that.
amazing. The people there, I don't know how they knew. Everybody knows everything. So we're walking along the Caledonian Canal, and there's these like little boat things that were going along, and people would say, "Are you the Americans? Are you the Americans?" We got to one little, I'll call it a village, a little town, and they were like, "Hurry up, you're late. They're expecting you. You better hurry on up." And we're like, oh my gosh. You know, it was the day that we walked the farthest. We walked 21 miles one day. That's a lot of miles to walk in a day. And we walked that far because we got lost. And we were lost. In fact, I took a picture of us as if it was a family of 3. We have a grown son, and it was my husband and our son, Evan, and me. And I thought, okay, so if we die, the police will find this camera, and they'll see that we had been a nice family at one point. So we were really lost. And then we were okay. In Scotland, there's no such thing as no trespassing laws. You are allowed to go anywhere. So we would cross these ancient walls that were like broken down, and these Highland cows were everywhere. They followed us. There were sheep, all kind, black sheep, white sheep with black faces, black sheep with white faces. And there were these horses. They weren't as big as Clydesdale horses, but they were huge. And we were like the Pied Piper. These animals were following us. And it was, we would see like a farmer in the distance on a tractor, and he or she would stand up and wave at us. But this was a very welcoming, it was I think, if I had to say, it is, to date, I've done a lot of wonderful things, but it is my favorite, most interesting experience to date that I've ever had. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
And how did this happen in Scotland? Because I mean, that's quite a distance away from home.
Where our background is Scottish, and I always wanted to go there. always wanted to go there. My husband's background is the Highlands. My maiden name is Hunter. Lowlands. I guess the Highlands and the Lowlands, we shouldn't get along, but we've been married for 44 years, so it works. But that was a place we both wanted to go. There's places that like he wants to go that I don't want to go. And there's places, I want to go that he doesn't want to go. This was a place we voted on because we both wanted to go, and our son wanted to go too. So the three of us went. We had a wonderful time. And like I said, if anybody out there listening hasn't been to Scotland and you're looking for a wonderful place, this is the place to go.
Awesome. It almost it reminded me of Forrest Gump, and when he runs across America, and the passion, 211 miles. I literally did read it thrice. It's like, okay, maybe there's a typo, maybe there's something wrong here.
No, but I do walk. You were right. Also, I walk 6 miles every day. I do it in 3 2-mile increments. So I here in the Pacific Northwest, when I get up in the morning at 4, it's still very dark. So I put a headlamp on, and Henry's my big dog. Henry and I, we do our first 2 miles, come back, and I write. And then after I've written for 2 hours, we go on another 2-mile walk, come back, write 2 more hours. And then we cap the day. We go out and we walk 2 more miles. And I live very close to the Boise River. We have a green belt down there. I live in a historic district. So it depends on, do we want to go down to the river? Do we want to bump into more people? What is it we want to do? We're close to, we could walk to the Capitol. It's only a mile from here. We have a lot of choices, and Boise is an incredibly dog-friendly town. It's a bicycle-friendly town. It's a walking-friendly town. So there's no strangers. Everybody, hi, how are you? We all carry what they call treat totes. It's a little thing you put on the back of your pants, and you can hand out treats to your dog or other dogs. And this is a very friendly town.
Wow. sounds. I mean, I'm imagining the place, and it brings a smile to the face.
Yes, and I don't know if you can see behind me. You can see that my ceiling is okay. So I live in the carriage house of what had been back in the day, a mansion considered back in the day, the Russell Mansion. It's on a tour. If you take a trolley tour, it's on the main house, which I'm looking at out the window, is out there. Well, this is the carriage house. This is where back in the day, it was built in 1865. It's the oldest still standing building in Boise. And this is where people would bring their carriages and their horses, and that would be where they park. Well, I'm upstairs in the hayloft. This is where all the hay was, and all of the bridles and saddles and all that kind of stuff. So this is where I write. I'm up in the hayloft of a carriage house. So Boise is such a quaint, I mean, it's big, but I live in a quaint little, there's sections of every little town, and I live in a historic section, and we're close to the river, we're close to a park, we can walk anywhere, and it's safe. We don't have to be worried about our safety.
Sure. Also, tell me about the love for red licorice.
Oh, yeah. I have a problem with red licorice. Red licorice is, for me, it's my drug of choice. There are so many gourmet types of red licorice. You can get that from Australia, has some phenomenal red licorice. Here in the United States, we've got good red licorice. You can get online. If you were to Google red licorice online, you would get hundreds of manufacturers. It's something I have enjoyed since I was a kid. Other kids would get, back in the day, we'd turn in bottles, and we'd get 3 cents per bottle and then 5 cents per bottle. And I would save up my money. Other kids would just spend their money and get, I'm going to get a popsicle, or I'm going to get a candy bar. I saved my money, and I got good red licorice. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I love it. I love it. Do you have an addiction? Do you have a candy that you love?
Not really. I don't think I'm not big on sweets anyways. So for me, I think the only thing which I think I'm addicted to is water.
Well, that's good.
I just love drinking water, and I think some of my friends tease me for causing the water shortage in the area.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, licorice is something that we don't get in India. I mean, it's not a candy that we have here. I mean, nowadays, yeah, you do get in some of the fancy stores, but it's not native to the area. So, and when I was in the US, I did try it a couple of times, but I mean, it was just an experiment. I never got hooked on.
Right.
So when I saw it in your description, and it was right next to being a kindness enthusiast, and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Let me double click on that when we meet.
It is. So kindness to me is so important. We 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 tend to forget that anymore. A smile, a hello, a wave can turn anybody's day around. We just don't
Right,
know what's going on in somebody else's
right,
life. We
right.
just have no idea. And being kind is a choice. Being kind is something I wish we would all choose. If every single one of us got up in the morning and said, "Okay, I'm putting on my kindness hat today," the world overnight would be a completely different place.
Yeah,
Completely different. We
right,
we tend to anymore um, be, you know, me, and what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? And if we just flip that, and how can I? It doesn't mean you have to go out and hug people, but just a smile
right,
can make a huge difference. You know, so many of us travel. We're on a plane, we're on a bus, we're on a train, we're on our feet, whatever it is. A smile, we could just give these out. It doesn't cost us anything. We can give these out, you know, by the boatloads, and it doesn't diminish anything. It doesn't come out of our wallet. It doesn't come out of our health. In fact, it boosts our health. When we are kind, when we smile, we get dopamine, it is a wonderful thing for our body. And if somebody smiles, it tends to be like a yawn. If I were to yawn, you would yawn. If
yes,
I smile, the chances are you're going to smile. And so if we're on an airplane, we turn around and we smile, many people smile back, and then the people that see them smile, and it's a contagious thing. And
right,
I wish that smiling and kindness were like COVID. I wish it was that permeates
hmm,
every area. So and then remember that when COVID was rampant and we all had these face masks on, the only way we knew somebody was smiling is our eyes, because when you can tell
right,
when somebody's smiling, you know, it's different than this, but when I smile, you can still tell. And that still meant a lot when we were all walking around with these masks, but you could see this,
right.
that somebody was smiling, and it made all the difference. So I'm a kindness enthusiast. I'm that's really important to me. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, and she lives downstairs. So we're in the hayloft, and they live downstairs in the where the carriages pulled in. We're up where the hay had been, and she's 5, and we work on kindness because there's bullies, you know,
Right.
at every age. There's bullies that are 90 years old, and there's bullies that are 9 years old, and so we work on kindness and on, you know, if this happens, what is our response? If this happens, what is our response? What can we do first? We can put our best foot forward first. We don't have to respond. We can be the initiators. And so we're working on kindness, and that's an important boy, that's
Yes.
really important.
Yeah. In fact, I think I recently was reading another book, and um, what we've been talking about so far is, the kind of kindness one gives out to other people, right? And I am completely in sync with you and on board with the idea that the world needs to become more tolerant, more kind, more forgiving, and more accepting of everyone. But it had a very interesting connotation to kindness, and that was the kindness to self. Uh, because I think now, today, in the world that we are in, there's so many people who are just adding that additional layer of pressure and the weight of expectations and measuring up to someone else they're seeing on Instagram, and especially the younger generations. And I think there's a lot of stress and a lot of uh, you know lack of peace. I think that the lack of serenity for youngsters especially. So I think I am, at least in my own way, trying to um, imbibe this thought of being kind to myself and to people around. Don't always succeed, but yeah, I mean, I think the conscious thought, I know that my behavior has changed to a certain degree, and that's
That's
promising.
huge. That's huge. And I think the biggest unkindness that we can do to ourselves is compare ourselves to others. Like
Yeah.
you brought up about Instagram.
Right.
The moment we stop comparing ourselves to them, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, academically, fill in the blank, the
Right.
moment we stop that, we feel good about ourselves. The time when we don't feel good about ourselves is usually when we're holding ourselves up next to somebody else and we see where we feel we
Yeah.
lack. We
Yeah.
feel we lack. That's about the only time when we don't feel good about ourselves, is when we're comparing ourselves. And if we would stop that, that's huge.
Huge. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is for sure. Is it something that you saw a lot of, or did your experience? You mentioned that you were a wellness instructor, or something on those lines, right?
I was an HHP, holistic health practitioner.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about how that journey was like, and how did that experience, um, lead you to the person you've become, and also if it reflects in your work in some way.
So being a holistic health practitioner let me see behind the curtain of a multitude of people, male, female, adult, children, and people who are incarcerated. I worked a lot with people incarcerated, and I got to see the light, bright side of people, and I got to see the dark shadow side of people. And so that privilege prompted a lot of self-reflection, and
Mm-hmm.
that self-reflection is reflected in the good characters and also the bad characters in my books. I have the people that are sweet, loving, kind, and thoughtful, and then the people that are mean, ugly, vile, and vicious. And I can draw from so many personalities that I got to have the opportunity, including my own, to
Right.
see behind the curtain. And people who might have visually come in and you think, oh my gosh, whoa, money bags and whatever. And then when you get to talk with them, no, that was nothing but a facade. So we know that this is true. So many people, that's why we shouldn't compare, because we don't really know. And
Right.
and we both know that so much of what we see on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, pick a social media platform, is dolled up and through a filter and so on and
Right.
so forth. So having had the privilege and honor of seeing behind the scenes, and then working with people who are incarcerated, the choices and consequences of poor choices, and how did it come about that you made such a poor choice, and how our parents and grandparents and siblings and neighbors and so forth can leave such an impression that we would do something so horrific. So we all have people that look at us and look up to us and maybe even mimic us that we don't even know. We are leaving impressions wherever we go, good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
We're leaving an impression, and it could be a really good one, and it could be a really not so good one. And these impressions, like I said, my granddaughter, I'm leaving an impression every single day. My fingerprints are all over this child, and I'm hoping that it's positive, uplifting, constructive, and healing, and that we're learning about choices and consequences, and
Right.
being our little light. You can walk into a dark cave, and one little light will light it up. And
Yes.
And if we're that little light, and then we stand next to another little light who stands next to another little light, wow. But one little light can make the entire difference in a dark cave.
Yeah. Very, very, very beautifully spoken. I really like that analogy. So obviously, there's a reference to when you were growing up as a child, and then you have a reference to when your son Evan grew up as a child, and now you have another reference when your granddaughter is growing up. How do you see, from your vantage point of having seen all those three periods? I think a lot of human nature doesn't really change, but a lot of environment makes them behave differently. How does that set of experiences and those windows of time that you've had the fortune of living through, how does that color your characters and stories and your worldview in general?
So things have changed hugely. I would not want to be my granddaughter today. When I was little, there weren't cell phones. A phone was on a wall and it had a curly cord, and you dialed, and there I got to play outside till it was dark and mom called us in. We were on our bikes. We were out running. We were playing marbles. We were playing tag. We were playing. Today, kids are on a laptop, on a cell phone, on an iPad. They're not out like we were. And it's a scarier world. Maybe it was always scary, but we didn't know it because the information didn't come to us that fast.
Yeah.
Right now, we know now if there's a shooting somewhere else. We know right now. And maybe that was always going on, but we didn't know about it. And so there's a huge things I see there. So I was born in 1957. So I had a completely different experience than my son, who was born in 1983, than my granddaughter, who was born 5 years ago. And it is seen somewhat in the characters, because I use characters of all different ages. I have characters that are in their, late 50s, early 60s, and I have, I think my youngest character, well, I'm about to have a birth in the one that I'm writing right now, but there's a character who just graduated from college and veterinary school. And so there's this expanse, and their experiences are completely different. I bring to the table different things than you bring to the table, but then that my son brings to the table. I know how to garden. If the push came to shove, I would know how to grow my own food if I had to. I would know how to can it. Kids today, no, that's not part of their experience. If we have some situation where we don't have food, I don't know how these folks I don't know how that's gonna work. I know how to change a tire if I had to change a tire. I love to camp. I know how to camp. A lot of people today know how to hotel. There's a big difference between camping and hoteling. So I do bring different experiences, not intentionally, I don't think, but it just, if I know, they're 40 years old or they're 60 years old or whatever, I think that brings a different flavor or a different layer to the page.
How much of inspiration do you find from obviously there is a set of characters. These are the policemen and the SWAT team members and the medical examiners and the coroners and all that stuff, right? So, but that's a different world. But I'm sure that there are people around you that you're talking about taking a walk in the evening, going to the marketplace, or even people in your family and friend circle. Do you draw inspirations from those interactions and those observations that you have as an author?
Certainly on some level, absolutely on some level. Consciously, maybe not, unless I'm specifically, interviewing somebody for something. And I need to know, could this really happen? And if it did, what would you do? I go after that information. But certainly, because I am a human being and I experience life through my five senses, in an interaction, I incorporate that because I experience that, not necessarily at a conscious level, but I certainly do, because it's part of my makeup. And then the other thing that I incorporate is I look at the news and what is happening, what's going on in the world, where is it happening, what age bracket is it happening to. And I came across a story that came out in December of 2023 that happened in Austria. I'm not going to give away too much, but it was, I couldn't believe it. And so I read it. It was a 14,000 word article, huge article about this thing that in today, not a long time ago, today was happening to children whose parents didn't want them anymore, and they disposed of them in this location called a villa. And what was happening experimentally to these children in today's society, 2023.
Wow.
And I thought, today, this is, I couldn't even believe in our world today. Now that, it got busted and, investigated and all this, but that first of all, that parents I don't want this kid anymore. He's too much trouble. So I'm going to go take him to this place and have his brain worked on or whatever. Unbelievable. So I can incorporate things like that. I look for the outrageous or or the very normal, because
Yeah.
it's even more scary when it's the very normal, the thing that looks
Right.
okay, the person in the law enforcement realm that should be a good guy or gal. We teach our children that police people are good, that firemen are and women are good, that doctors
Right.
and are, you know, but sometimes there are people in those realms that not so much,
Hmm.
and that's what's scary. So I do intentionally incorporate that type of thing, but unintentionally just my interaction with people,
Yeah.
because it is part of my experience.
Yeah. I also was reading the recent, I think there was a newsletter from Blackbird writers, which featured your, there was a very interesting description that you given how a medical examiner was different from a coroner, and how, and I was quite taken by it, because not that the distinction mattered, but the fact that such a distinction matters to an author who is writing in that genre. I think it just inspires people like me, other people who are readers and also budding writers, to know how much nuance goes into writing every word of a book. So that was something very, very interesting to read for me.
And you know, that distinction, though it's small, is huge,
Yeah.
and you can use that to your, you can leverage that little difference. And I got so many emails on that saying, oh, I watched a medical show and there was a distinction. Oh, and I, you know, that was just very, very interesting to me, that people, I was, you know, as a Blackbird writer, we have to contribute to the newsletter once every however often. And you just panic, like, what am I going to say? What am I going to write about? Oh my gosh, I have nothing that anybody's interested in. And I had just gotten the opportunity to speak with both types of you know, coroner. Here in Idaho, we have coroners, but in Washington State, where my books take place, they have medical examiners. So I got the opportunity to, these professionals give their time. It's so wonderful that I get, you know, they say yes. I got to just talk to the warden at a maximum security, you know, that people say yes. And so that was a really interesting and fun and unique distinction. And yes, I'm not the only author. I think almost everybody who writes a book, we examine our words. We sit and we, you know, we read it out loud. We read our, you know, we print our work and we sit with a red pen and a yellow highlighter and we read our words. Is there something, first of all, can I make it shorter? Can I make it concise? Concision is the name of the game, especially in this world where we have these, you know,
Right.
160 character bytes or whatever it might be. So readers, you know, want to get to it right now. And I am applauded and get tomatoes thrown at me for both, for my descriptions. I want to have descriptions. I want the reader to feel like they are in this room. They know that the wall clock is right there. They know behind them is a buffet, and in that drawer there's a knife. I want them to know that over there is a tea kettle and over there is a whatever. I want them to see it in their head. So I've been married 44 years, and for 44 years, we have not had a television. I said, that's a deal breaker for me. No TV. The reason is, for me, it takes away your imagination. When you read, you have to picture all this stuff in your own head. When it's
Yes.
dished out to you on a television, you know what they look like. You know, you see it. I don't want that. I want my own vision. That is what exercises my brain. If it's spoon fed to me, I don't like that. So I mean, we own a screen that's not a television, and we can go out, you know, one night a week and rent a movie and see that. We don't live under a rock, but we are huge readers, and I want my own imagination to do the work. I don't want to be spoon fed that, but I'm assuming that people who pick up a book and read, they like to use their imagination too. So I like to let them know so they can start. Okay, this is how I'm picturing what she's saying. I'm in this cave and I'm feeling the wet wall, and there's bat guano on the ground, and this is the smell that's happening. So and somebody could say, no, but for me, I want my imagination in gear.
Yes. And I mean, I'm a avid reader myself. I read fiction, and if someone tells me that there's a movie that is coming out about a book which I have not yet read, I make it a point not to see the movie first. I do try to read the book first, and if the book excites me and it's something that I really, really like, then I don't watch the movie at all, because I don't want that experience to get spoiled.
Exactly. I'm sitting here as you're talking, trying to think of a book to screen adaptation where the screen adaptation was better, and I can't come up with one. For me, I think the books are always better, and it's because I have it in, I'm the one who played it in my mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think that the vision that each person creates, and for example, if you were reading, both of us are reading the same book, it's so amazing that it never creates the same visual in two heads. It's just amazing, and I have seen this with so many people now, that what connects with one reader is very, very different from what connects with the other reader. And I mean, it's just mind-blowing how many possibilities there are.
And I belong to 2 book clubs, and to your point, we're so different, and like I'm not going to even be able to name a book, but it would be like I loved it and somebody hated it, or I hated it and somebody loved it, and it was the same exact book, and we took it completely differently. So I like licorice. Not everybody does. We have different taste buds. We have different minds. We're different, and that's the beauty of it. So some people really like the Sean McPherson novels, and some people are like, no, she's not as thriller is. So it is a personal experience, and that's what makes it the beauty. Is it is a personal experience. It's not this same thing that we're all being spoon fed on a television.
Great. It's been a very, very interesting journey with words that I've had so far, and I see that you're having fun with yours. I think are at the end of our time. It's already almost an hour since we've been chatting.
Oh wow!
But I think on behalf of everyone who joined in and listened today, thank you so much, Laurie. You have just brightened my day, and thank you so much for speaking from the heart, and not just about books, but in general about life and about your philosophy of how to live it. I wish you all the best for the 4th book in the Sean McPherson series, and I will definitely lay my hands on Indelible and start with that.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this so much. Thank you. And I know it's nighttime for you, so have a good sleep.
Thank you so much, and you have a good day. Bye-bye. Talk to you again sometime.
Bye-bye.